Hello Stampers, welcome to the craft room and another episode of Card Play. Today I'd like to show you how to use your Framelits Labels Collection dies to do some embossing to create some really beautiful effects on your cards and papercraft projects. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is a little bit of stamping. I have a piece of crumb cake cardstock here, and this piece is 6 inches by 5 inches, and we're going to be using the Apothecary Art stamp set, which coordinates beautifully with your Framelits Labels collection. And I'm going to grab this particular stamp from the Framelits Labels collection and some early espresso ink, and we're going to stamp that image right in the center of this piece of cardstock. Give that a good push. So now we have our image stamped in the middle of this piece of cardstock, and now I'd like to bring in our Framelits Labels collection. They come in this great little envelope that's labeled so you know which collection of your framelits are inside. You also get the instructions, and when you open up those instructions, the dies are here stuck down with some double stick tape. And in this collection you get 6 separate dies of varying sizes. So we're actually going to choose the third to smallest one, which is going to be one of our embossing layers. And we're also going to choose the next largest one, which is going to be our next embossing layer. And let me show you how to emboss using your Big Shot and these framelits. So to emboss with your framelits, we're going to begin with our multi-purpose platform, and you want to open up your multi-purpose platform so that none of the tabs are being used. So we're just going to have the base of the platform. The next piece of your sandwich is going to be an acrylic cutting pad on the bottom. The next thing we're going to be using is a cardstock shim, and this is just one piece of cardstock. I happen to be using confetti. You can use whatever color you like. And why we're using a shim is to create just the right amount of pressure in our sandwich. And you may have to play around with this a little bit in your Big Shot. They might each be a tiny bit different, but I found that this works really well. The next thing we're going to be putting down is our standard texture silicone rubber pad, and this you might have already used with your textures plates, and we're going to use it for our embossing with our framelits as well. Then next we're going to take the cardstock that we actually want to emboss. I'm going to turn it sideways so that it fits perfectly in the Big Shot. And you'll notice with your framelits have 2 sides. They have one side that's perfectly smooth, and they have one side that has a little ridge. The side with the little ridge is your cutting side. So if I place that face down, it's actually going to cut through this cardstock. And right now that's not what we want to do. We actually want to emboss. So you want to make sure that the smooth side of your framelit is actually on your paper. So the ridge side is facing up, and you want to line that up with your stamped image. This is so nice that the Apothecary Art stamp set coordinates so beautifully with these labels. Then we're going to take the next biggest framelit, again on the smooth side, and we're going to place that down on our cardstock, trying to make that quite even with the first label framelit that we place down. And the next part of our sandwich is going to be another acrylic cutting pad right on top. And then the next thing is another shim. I found that cardstock is a little too thick. It creates too deep of an impression, so I just took a piece of printer paper and I'm putting that on top to act as a little bit more of a shim. So just a quick review on your sandwich. You have your fully open multi-purpose platform, then an acrylic cutting pad, then a piece of cardstock as a shim, then your standard textures silicone rubber, then your cardstock, then your framelits, then another acrylic cutting pad, and finally a piece of printer paper. And we're going to roll that through the Big Shot. And once we've rolled that through, we're going to remove our top 2 layers, and we're going to take a look at what we've embossed, and hopefully you can see that really well. It's created a beautiful embossing on your cardstock. Now we need to cut it out. So we're going to build a little bit different sandwich. We're cutting. We're going to start once again with our multi-purpose platform, except this time it's going to be fully closed. Next we're going to place down an acrylic cutting pad, Next is going to come the piece of cardstock that you would like to cut out. Then you're going to take your framelit, and we actually need to go up one size if we want to keep both of these embossing layers and have the card or cutout look like this. With this extra bit, we're going to go up one size in our labels. If you wanted to cut things out right along that embossed edge, then you would just use the largest size you used for embossing. So I'm going to go up one layer, or one size, with my framelit. And now we want the cutting edge, this ridged edge, to be facing down, since we want to cut as opposed to emboss this piece of cardstock. And finally, for our sandwich, we're just going to place another acrylic cutting pad right on top and roll that through the Big Shot. And this is the sandwich as it came out the other end. We're just going to remove that top cutting pad, and you'll see that our framelit really nicely cut out that embellishment. And don't forget about this bottom piece, because that would be a really, really nice frame that you could use on a scrapbook page or another paper craft project. Just so pretty how that gets cut out. You could also, if you wanted, come in with your next largest framelit and either emboss that, as we've just done, or you could cut it out and you'll have more of a frame shape that you could use on another project. So now let's work on completing our card. I'm actually going to bring in my Crop-A-Dile, and I'm just going to punch a hole right here on that piece that we just embossed. And then I'm going to take some Very Vanilla satin ribbon, and to get it through that little hole, I fold it once in half, and then I fold it again in half, so that I could try to finagle it through that, or thread it through that little hole. And once we pull that through, we're going to take our ribbon scissors and just cut off a piece of ribbon. And then we're just going to knot that here on the side of this die cut piece. And then we're just going to snip the ends of our ribbon. We're going to adhere this down to our cardstock base next, so I've taken a piece of Naturals Ivory cardstock. This piece is 5.5 by 8.5, and I've scored it in the middle, and we're just going to fold that in half. And I'm just going to use some dimensionals around the edges of my embossed piece to adhere that to the card. And you may even want to double up your dimensionals in the center like this. And that way you maintain the height and it doesn't get smushed when you go to mail your card or place it in an envelope. And we're just going to adhere that down to the front of our card. Next, we're going to create our sentiment, our greeting, and I'm going to use this Happy Birthday, which also is from the Apothecary Art stamp set. And I'm going to stick with Early Espresso, so we're just going to ink that up and stamp that down. And I'm just going to come in with my paper snips to make this into a banner. So all I do is snip in from the center and then go from the corner right to the cut that I just made, and then from this corner right to the cut that I just made, and remove those. And we're going to do that to the other end. And this piece, since I don't think I told you, it's a 1/2 inch wide, and it was 4 1/4 inches long. And then we're just going to adhere that down, also using some dimensionals. I'm actually going to place the dimensionals right here onto the card. And we're just going to adhere that down right on top of those dimensionals. The last thing that we are going to do is add a little bit of dazzling details. This is a new product that Stampin' Up! Has come out with that I love because I've always loved dazzling diamonds, except for the fact that it gets everywhere in my craft room. So this is much like a glitter glue with your dazzling diamonds in it. So it's a lot neater to use on your cards. It takes a little bit of time to dry, but not very long at all. So I'm just adding some dazzling details into the center of each of my flowers just to give this card a little bit of bling. And there you have it, a really fun way to use your Framelits Labels collection to do embossing and cutting to create beautiful embellishments for your cards and papercraft projects. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Card Play, and of course I look forward to seeing you again very soon here in the craft room.